I'm Shiloh Branigan from Amarillo Brewing Supply. Today I'm going to brew an all-grain standard American lager. Right now we are heating our strike water to about 125, so when we drain off into our mash tun it'll be about 120, and that'll be our protein rest. That'll be the starting of our mash. So right now I'm going to dump the grain in, and then I'm going to open the valve and pour the water in. Now there are extra rice hulls in our grain, but this we're going to put in first to make a filter bed for our grain. And this was just 15 pounds of pilsner and half a pound of flaked corn and 2 pounds of flaked rice. We're going to strike with 10 gallons of water at 125. It's going to be about 120-121 degrees for our protein rest. Now we're going to put 2 tablespoons of pH 5.2 stabilizer in our mash. Now we're going to stir this up, make sure there aren't any clumps, dry spots. And this will be a decoction mash, so in about 35 minutes we'll start decocting, and we'll get more into that when we start doing it. Now we're going to start decocting. Decocting will make the starches more accessible to the enzymes once we add them back into the mash. It will also create dextrins, which will improve our head retention and body, and it will raise the temperature for our mash. Our decoction has to be mostly grain, and we're going to fill up this 4-quart pitcher 3 times and add it to the boil kettle, where we will slowly bring it to a boil. We're going to stir our decoction constantly to avoid hot spots and scorching. As our temperature goes up, we will reach different levels of enzyme ranges. Once we hit about 165, most of the enzymes will be destroyed. So now we are about at 140 degrees. At around 140, you see a lot of beta activity. It's been about 5 minutes, and now we're up at about 155 degrees. This is our alpha amylase enzyme stage, which will continue the process of converting starch into sugar. We're at about 165 degrees now. This is where we start to actually denature our enzymes, and this is where the decoction really starts to take place. We're going to boil this now for about 25 minutes, continuously stirring, and then we're going to add it back to our mash, which still has active enzymes in it. And this will raise the temperature of the entire mash. We're about 3 minutes away from adding our decoction into our active mash, and as you can see, it's really, really thick. There are a lot of caramelized sugars in there. We are finished with our decoction, so now we're going to add it back into our active mash and stir to prevent any hot spots. We're going to go ahead and do a second decoction. Our mash is at about 147 right now, so we're going to boil our decoction and dump it back into the mash and try to raise it up to 155. You'll notice that this one's a lot thinner. We're just going to heat it long enough to bring it to a boil and add it back to our mash to raise our temperature. Time to start heating our sparge water, and we're going to start our orlog. We're going to open this valve right here and then run it into the kettle until it runs clear, and then we're going to shut the valve off and then dump this kettle back into the mash, being sure not to disturb the grain bed. The grain bed is going to act as a filter. So when we run it again, it's going to be nice and clear. So after our second decoction, we've been letting our grains mash for about 15 minutes. So now we're going to start our Morlock. So we're going to go ahead and open the valve and then we'll stop it when it becomes clear. And this is pre-sparge. So we're doing all this before we sparge. The beer we're making is a very, very light beer, so we want to make sure that it's very clear, very light as possible. And you can see this is very cloudy right now, so we're going to run it until it comes clear. Our wort has run clear, so now we're going to add our wort back into the masher. Water is at temperature, so now we're going to go ahead and do our sparge. We've already converted the sugars in our mash, so the purpose of the sparge is to wash all the excess sugars into our boil kettle. We're done with our sparge, so we're going to bring our wort to a boil. It's going to be a 90-minute boil, so we'll boil for 30 minutes before we add any hops. The reason we're doing a 90-minute boil is because we're working with pilsen malt, and pilsen malt produces a lot of DMS, so we have to boil it longer to boil off that DMS. Now we're going to take our pre-boil gravity reading, which is estimated to be at about 1035. So we'll just take a little bit of wort right here and drip it onto our refractometer. Now we want to wait a little while for it to cool and then we'll take our reading. So it looks like we're at about 1040, which is close enough. We're to a boil, so we're going to boil for 90 minutes, and of course we'll throw in our 60-minute hop additions in 30 minutes. You really want to see a rolling boil, because that's what drives off the DMS, and that's where kettle size becomes an issue for a lot of people, because there's a big risk of boilovers. It's time to add our hops now, so have your spoon ready, because once you throw those hops in, it will try to boil over. So add these, stir, and add them slowly. Now we're going to set a timer for 30 minutes, and then we're going to add our second hop addition. Our 30-minute timer has gone off, so now we're going to add our second addition hops. Again, have your spoon ready to stir. And then we'll set another timer for 15 minutes to add our final hop addition. It's been 15 minutes, so I'm going to add my last hop addition. I'm doing some hops that are limey, citrusy, lemony, so I thought to complement it, I would do some lime peel to make it even more limey, citrusy. And since this is a lager, it's going to take a while to be ready. It'll be ready about in the spring. It'll be a nice summer beer. about 5 minutes, we'll go ahead and throw in our Moral Flock tablets and our yeast nutrient. It's been 5 minutes, so now we're going to add our Moral Flock and our yeast nutrient, and then we will boil for another 10 minutes, and then we'll cool it down. We're ready to cool our wort down. We have our wort chiller in here already. It has been in there for 10 minutes to sterilize it. And we're going to turn off our heat and then stick the lid on it. We don't want any flies or wasps or anything else that's attracted to the sugar to get in there because it will infect the beer. Our hose water is a little too warm, so we have a 2 wort chiller system going on here. We have the wort chiller in the pot, and then it's attached to a wort chiller in an ice bath. And then of course the hose is attached to this one, so it'll get nice and cold. Our wort is now cooled down to 70 degrees, so we're going to go ahead and transfer to our 6.5 gallon Carboys. We're going to try to keep as much junk out of the fermenter as possible, so I'm going to put the auto siphon a little bit above where I think the tube might be, and I'll go ahead and start my siphon. If you see, there are little chunks of floaties in here. That is from our whorl flock. The whorl flock is bound to the proteins and is causing all that gunk right there. I've taken a gravity sample, so we're going to look and see where our gravity is, if it's where it should be. And it looks like it is at 1044, which is exactly where Beersmith predicted it. Now you can see that they're starting to settle. See the difference there? All of this will fall down to the bottom, and this will be crystal clear. This is the same Carboy we were looking at earlier, and it's only been 5 minutes. And as you can see, there's a huge difference. All the protein has fallen to the bottom. So now all there is to do is fill up the Carboys, and we will cool down our wort to 47 degrees and then pitch our yeast. We have a Zurich lager yeast by White Labs we're going to use, and we have a German Bock yeast we're going to use. We're just going to split them between each Carboy, that way we have 2 different types of beers. We will take our wine whip to them and aerate them so the yeast can take on their first stage of life, which requires oxygen. So that's it for today. I'm Shiloh Branigan from Amarillo Brewing Supply. I'm going to post the recipe for my lager below the YouTube video. Be sure to like us on Facebook, and please be sure to subscribe to our channel. Now we're going to set a timer for 30 minutes, and then we're going to add our second hop addition.